My entire family skipped my wedding to go on a luxury vacation in Costa Rica, claiming they couldn't afford to attend my special day. 3 years later, I used my inheritance to secretly buy the exact resort they booked for their annual family reunion. When they arrived expecting five-star treatment, they got something very different from their new owner, me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember the exact moment my world shifted. I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment in downtown Portland, surrounded by wedding planning magazines and sticky notes with vendor phone numbers, when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Honey, we need to talk. Call me when you get this." Mom. It was a Tuesday evening in March, exactly 2 months before my wedding day. I'd been planning this day for over a year, carefully saving every penny from my job as a graphic designer to create the perfect celebration. Nothing extravagant, just a beautiful outdoor ceremony at Willowbrook Gardens followed by dinner for 60 guests. Simple, elegant, and within my modest budget. I dialed my mother's number, expecting to discuss final headcount details or maybe hear about the dress she'd finally chosen. Patricia Hawthorne had always been particular about these things, and at 58, she developed very specific opinions about what constituted appropriate wedding planning. "Hi, Mom, what's up?" I said, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued addressing invitation envelopes. "Oh, Delilah's sweetheart," she began, and I immediately knew something was wrong. She only used my full name when she was about to deliver bad news. "I'm afraid I have some disappointing news about the wedding." My pen stopped moving. What kind of disappointing news? There was a pause, one of those loaded silences that somehow manages to contain an entire conversation's worth of dread. "Well, your father and I have been talking, and we've realized we have a conflict with your wedding date." "A conflict?" I repeated slowly. "Mom, you've known the date for 8 months, May 15th. We sent save the dates in September." I know, and we feel terrible about this," she continued, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she was about to justify something unjustifiable. "But you remember Uncle Raymond, your father's brother from Seattle? Well, he's planned this amazing family reunion trip to Costa Rica, and it's the same weekend as your wedding." I set down my pen completely and gave the phone my full attention. "Are you telling me you're choosing Uncle Raymond's vacation over my wedding?" "It's not that simple, honey. This trip has been in the works for months, and Raymond has already put down non-refundable deposits for everyone. The whole family is going, your father's siblings, all the cousins, everyone. It's at this incredible resort called Vista Paraíso, and Raymond is paying for everything." "Everything, Delilah. Do you understand what that means for us financially?" I felt something cold and sharp settling in my chest. "Mom, this is my wedding. My wedding that I've been planning for over a year. The wedding you helped me choose the venue for. And we're so proud of you for putting it together so beautifully," she said quickly. "But sweetheart, you have to understand our position. Your father's construction business hasn't been doing well this year, and we simply can't afford to turn down a free luxury vacation to Costa Rica and then also travel to your wedding and pay for accommodations." "You live 3 hours away," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "and I never asked you to pay for anything except showing up." "Well, there are other expenses," she continued, as if she hadn't heard me. "Wedding gifts, new outfits, gas money, potentially an overnight stay. It all adds up. And frankly, Raymond's invitation is just better timing for us financially." I stared at the stack of wedding invitations in front of me. Beautiful cream cardstock with elegant gold lettering that had cost me 2 weeks' worth of grocery money. My parents' names were listed right at the top. "Patricia and Robert Hawthorne request the pleasure of your company at the marriage of their daughter Delilah." "What about Aunt Cecilia and Uncle Tom?" I asked, grasping for some thread of hope. "Are they going too?" "Yes, sweetheart, and your cousins Jade and River." Actually, now that I think about it, Most of your father's side of the family will be on this trip. The room seemed to tilt slightly. So you're telling me that not only are you and Dad skipping my wedding, but most of Dad's entire family is also choosing a vacation over my special day? When you put it like that, it sounds worse than it is, she said with a nervous laugh. Look, honey, weddings are just one day. You'll have many anniversaries to celebrate, but this kind of family trip? This is once in a lifetime. Uncle Raymond is 73 years old. Who knows if he'll ever be able to organize something like this again? I felt my hands starting to shake. Mom, this isn't just one day. This is the most important day of my life so far. This is the day I marry the person I love most in the world, and I wanted my family there to witness it. And we want to be there in spirit. In spirit? I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Mom, I don't need you there in spirit. I need you there in person. I need my parents at my wedding. Delilah, you're being dramatic. Plenty of people have small weddings without their entire families present. And think about it. This way you'll save money on catering. Every guest who doesn't come is money back in your pocket. The casual way she said it, as if my wedding was just a financial burden being lifted rather than the most important celebration of my life being abandoned, made something crack inside my chest. Have you told Austin about this? I asked, referring to my younger brother. Well, yes, and he understands completely. He said he'd rather go to Costa Rica too, given the choice between a free luxury vacation and a wedding reception in Willowbrook Gardens. Of course he did. Austin, at 25, had never missed an opportunity for a free vacation, and he'd certainly never prioritized anyone else's important moments over his own entertainment. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice now eerily calm. You, Dad, Austin, Aunt Cecilia, Uncle Tom, Jade, and River are all choosing to go to Costa Rica instead of coming to my wedding. We're not choosing anything over your wedding, honey. We're just managing our resources wisely. Managing their resources wisely. That's what my wedding had become, a resource management problem. Mom, I said quietly, I've been planning this day for over a year. I chose the date specifically because it worked for everyone's schedules. I've been saving every penny to make sure it's beautiful. I've been addressing invitations by hand because I couldn't afford to have them printed professionally. And you're telling me that a free vacation is more valuable to you than being there for the most important day of my life. Now don't make us feel guilty for making a practical decision, she said, her tone shifting to defensive. We raised you to be independent and self-sufficient. You should be proud that you can handle your wedding without needing us to hold your hand through it. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Outside my apartment window, Portland was going about its evening business. People walking dogs, couples holding hands, families heading home from dinner. Normal families who probably showed up for each other's important moments. I have to go, I said. Delilah, don't be upset. We'll take lots of pictures in Costa Rica and show you when we get back. And maybe you and James can plan a little honeymoon trip after your wedding, something small and romantic. James, my fiancé James, who had been looking forward to meeting my extended family at our wedding. James, who had spent months learning my family members' names and interests so he could have meaningful conversations with them at the reception. James, who was going to be so confused when I told him that the people who were supposed to love me most had collectively decided that a vacation was more important than our marriage. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, surrounded by wedding plans and dreams, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just disappointment. This wasn't just hurt feelings. This was a moment of clarity that would change everything. They had made their choice. Now I was about to make mine. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the conversation with my mother, searching for some angle I'd missed, some misunderstanding that could explain how my entire family had collectively decided that a vacation was more important than my wedding day. By morning, I'd convinced myself that maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe there was more to the story. Maybe if I approached this differently, we could find a solution. I called my father directly. Robert Hawthorne had always been the more reasonable parent, the one who mediated between my mother's dramatic tendencies and reality. If anyone could help me understand this situation, it would be him. "Hey, Dad, it's me," I said when he picked up on the third ring. "Morning, sweetheart. I suppose your mother told you about the Costa Rica situation?" The way he said it, the Costa Rica situation, as if it were some unavoidable natural disaster rather than a choice they were actively making, immediately put me on edge. "She did. Dad, I need you to help me understand this. You've known about my wedding date since last summer. How is it possible that Uncle Raymond planned this trip for the exact same weekend without checking with anyone first?" There was a long pause. "Well, honey, Raymond didn't exactly know about your wedding when he started planning this." "What do you mean he didn't know? I sent save the dates to everyone in September." Another pause. "Did you send one to Raymond?" I felt my stomach drop. "Dad, I don't have Uncle Raymond's address. I asked Mom for it 3 times, and she kept saying she'd get it to me later. I assumed she'd told him about the date." "Ah," he said, and I could practically hear him realizing how this looked. "Well, that's unfortunate timing, then." "Unfortunate timing?" I repeated. "Dad, even if Raymond didn't know, you knew. Mom knew. Austin knew. Why didn't anyone mention my wedding when he was planning this trip?" "Honey, you have to understand, Raymond was so excited about this family reunion idea. He's been talking about it for years, wanting to get everyone together before he gets too old to travel. When he finally pulled the trigger and started making arrangements, it just seemed like maybe it wasn't the right time to complicate things." I sat down heavily on my couch. "Complicate things? Dad, my wedding isn't a complication, it's my wedding." "Of course it is, sweetheart. And we're very proud of you and James. But you have to see this from our perspective. Raymond is paying for everything. Flights, accommodations, meals, activities. We're talking about a $10,000 trip per couple, completely free. Your mother and I haven't had a real vacation in 5 years. So this is about money." "It's not just about money," he said quickly, though his tone suggested it absolutely was about money. "It's about family. This is a chance for the whole Hawthorne clan to be together, maybe for the last time. Raymond's health isn't what it used to be, and who knows when we'll all have another opportunity like this." I felt a familiar frustration building, the same feeling I'd had countless times growing up when my parents would present completely illogical arguments as if they made perfect sense. "Dad, I'm family too. I'm your daughter, and this is my wedding." "Of course you're family, Delilah. Don't be ridiculous." "Then why are you choosing Uncle Raymond's vacation over my wedding?" "We're not choosing anything over anything," he said, his voice taking on that patient tone people use when they think you're being unreasonable. "We're making a practical decision based on our circumstances. You're a grown woman with your own life. You don't need us there to hold your hand." There it was again, this idea that needing my parents at my wedding was somehow childish or unreasonable. "Dad, I don't need you to hold my hand. I need you to be there because you love me and because this day matters to me. Sweetheart, of course we love you. That's exactly why we know you'll understand our position here. You've always been the responsible one, the one who thinks things through logically." I realized what was happening. He was trying to make me feel like the reasonable response was to agree with them, to prove my maturity by accepting their absence without complaint. "Have you seen the resort Raymond booked?" I asked, changing tactics. "Oh, Delilah, it's incredible." His voice immediately became more animated. "Vista Paraíso. It's this 5-star resort right on the Pacific coast. Private beaches, multiple restaurants, spa services, golf course." Raymond showed us the brochure, and it's like something out of a magazine. The suites have private pools, and the main infinity pool overlooks the ocean. Honestly, it's the kind of place your mother and I never thought we'd get to experience. The enthusiasm in his voice when describing the resort versus the careful, measured tone he'd used when discussing my wedding told me everything I needed to know about his priorities. "That does sound amazing," I said quietly. "It really is. And sweetheart, this is exactly why we hope you'll understand. This isn't just a vacation, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience." "And my wedding isn't?" "Well, of course it is, but, honey, be realistic. Your wedding is one evening at Willowbrook Gardens. It's lovely, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite the same scale as a week in paradise, you know?" The casual dismissal of my carefully planned celebration hit me like a physical blow. To him, my wedding was just one evening, while their vacation was a week in paradise. "Dad, do you remember when I was little and I used to plan those elaborate tea parties for my dolls?" "Of course," he said, sounding confused by the change of subject. "And you and Mom would always come when I invited you, even though it was just pretend and probably boring for you." "Well, yes, but that's different." "How is it different? You came to my pretend tea parties because they mattered to me. This is my wedding, Dad. This is real, and it matters to me more than anything ever has." "Delilah, you're being emotional about this." "I'm being emotional?" "Dad, I'm talking about my wedding day. Of course I'm emotional about it." "What I mean is, you're not thinking practically. Look, here's what I suggest. Why don't you and James postpone the wedding by a few weeks? That way we can all be there, and you'll have time to plan something even better." I felt my mouth fall open. "Postpone my wedding? Dad, we have deposits down. We have vendors booked. We have guests planning to travel. You want me to postpone my entire wedding so you can go on vacation?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable," he said with a nervous laugh. "Because it is unreasonable." "Delilah, calm down. There's no need to get upset. We're family, and family works these things out." "Family shows up for each other," I said, my voice shaking now. "Family prioritizes each other's important moments." "And we do, sweetheart. But we also have to be practical. This Costa Rica trip is a gift that Raymond may never be able to offer again. Your wedding? Well, you can have another ceremony later, maybe for your first anniversary. We could all be there for that." Another ceremony. He was suggesting I have another ceremony because my actual wedding wasn't worth prioritizing. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." "If this were Austin's wedding, would you still choose the Costa Rica trip?" The silence stretched so long that I thought the call had dropped. That's not a fair question, Delilah." "Why isn't it fair?" "Because Austin's situation would be different. He's never been as independent as you are." "You mean he's never been as willing to accept being deprioritized as I am?" "That's not what I said." "But it's what you meant." I could feel tears starting to form. "Dad, I've spent my whole life being the easy daughter, the one who doesn't cause problems, the one who doesn't ask for much. And now, when I'm asking for the one thing that really matters to me, you're telling me that I should be understanding about being abandoned." "Nobody's abandoning anyone. We're making a difficult choice in an impossible situation." "No, Dad, you're making an easy choice and trying to convince me it's difficult. You're choosing a free vacation over your daughter's wedding, and you're trying to make me feel unreasonable for being hurt by that." "Delilah, I think you need to take some time to cool off and think about this logically." "I am thinking about it logically." Logically, parents show up for their children's weddings. Logically, family members don't abandon each other for vacation opportunities. Logically, the people who claim to love you most should want to be there for the most important day of your life. We do love you, sweetheart. That's exactly why we know you're strong enough to handle this. And there it was, the final insult. My strength, my independence, my maturity were being used as weapons against me, reasons why I deserved less consideration than other family members. "I have to go, Dad." "Delilah, don't hang up angry. Let's talk about this more when you've had time to process. There's nothing more to talk about. You've made your choice. We love you, sweetheart. I know you do, I said quietly, but apparently not enough. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment, finally understanding that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a scheduling conflict. This was my family showing me exactly where I ranked in their priorities. And for the first time in my life, I was done accepting that ranking. After hanging up with my father, I sat motionless on my couch for what felt like hours. The afternoon sun was streaming through my small apartment windows, casting long shadows across the wedding planning materials scattered on my coffee table. Venue contracts, catering menus, flower arrangements, all the pieces of what I'd thought would be the happiest day of my life, now looking like evidence of my own naivete. I picked up one of the response cards that had come back in the mail. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, my elderly neighbor from childhood, had written in her shaky handwriting, "Wouldn't miss it for the world, so excited to celebrate your special day." Mrs. Fitzgerald, who was 82 years old and used a walker, was more committed to being at my wedding than my own parents. That's when it hit me, really hit me. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern that had been my entire life, and I'd been too accommodating to see it clearly. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the photo album my mother had made for me when I graduated college. I flipped through the pages, and suddenly every memory looked different through this new lens of understanding. There was my high school graduation. I'd been valedictorian, and I remembered being so excited for my family to hear my speech. But in the photo, I could see my parents checking their phones while I spoke at the podium. They'd left immediately after the ceremony to drive Austin to some baseball tournament 3 hours away. "We're so proud of you, honey," they'd said, "but Austin's team is counting on him." I turned the page. My college graduation. I'd graduated summa cum laude with a degree in graphic design, something I'd worked incredibly hard for while working 2 part-time jobs. But my parents had almost missed the ceremony entirely because they'd stayed an extra day at Austin's college to help him move apartments. They'd arrived just as the ceremony was ending, claiming traffic had been, quote, unexpectedly bad. There was the photo from when I'd gotten my first real job at a prestigious design firm in Portland. I'd invited the family out to celebrate, and we'd planned to go to dinner at my favorite restaurant. But Austin had called during appetizers with some drama about his girlfriend, and my parents had spent the entire meal on the phone with him, mediating his relationship problems. My career milestone had become background noise to his personal crisis. I kept flipping. Every achievement, every important moment, every time I'd needed support. There was always something more urgent involving Austin, or some other family obligation that took precedence. And every time I'd been understanding, every time I'd made excuses for them, every time I'd convinced myself that being low maintenance was a virtue. But this, my wedding, this was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be the one day that was undeniably, unquestionably about me. I called my brother Austin directly. Maybe he could help me understand what I was missing, or maybe he could talk to our parents about changing their minds. "Hey, Delilah," he answered on the second ring. "I guess Mom and Dad told you about the Costa Rica thing?" They did. "Austin, I need you to help me understand something. How is it okay for the entire family to skip my wedding for a vacation?" "Look, sis, I get that you're bummed, but you have to see this from our perspective. This is Vista Paraíso we're talking about. Do you know how expensive this place is? We're talking about suites that cost $2,000 a night. Uncle Raymond is dropping serious cash on this trip. And my wedding doesn't matter because it's not expensive enough?" "That's not what I said. But come on, Delilah, be realistic. Your wedding is at Willowbrook Gardens. It's nice and all, but it's not exactly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This Costa Rica trip? This is the kind of thing we'll never get another chance to do." I felt something sharp and cold crystallizing in my chest. "Austin, I'm your sister. This is my wedding day. And I love you, you know that. But honestly, you'll probably have a better time without all of us there anyway. You know how Mom gets at events? She'll spend the whole time worrying about whether everything looks right and if people are having fun. And Dad will probably spend the reception talking about work with whoever sits next to him. You'll be able to actually enjoy yourself without having to manage all of our personalities. I don't want to enjoy myself without you there. I want my family at my wedding. Delilah, you're being kind of selfish about this. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'm being selfish? Yeah, I mean, think about it. You're asking us to give up this incredible free vacation so we can come to your wedding, which is basically just a party. And it's not like you're paying for anything for us. We'd have to cover travel, hotels, wedding gifts. Meanwhile, Uncle Raymond is literally handing us a $10,000 vacation for free. Austin, it's not just a party, it's my wedding. Same thing, really. Look, I know you've put a lot of work into planning it, and I'm sure it'll be great, but weddings happen all the time. How often do we get invited on luxury vacations to Costa Rica? I realized that to Austin, my wedding was interchangeable with any other social event. It held no special significance beyond being an obligation that was less appealing than a vacation. Have you even looked at Vista Paraíso online? He continued. The place has 4 restaurants, 3 pools, a private beach, and a spa that costs more per treatment than most people spend on groceries in a month. Plus, all the activities are included. Ziplining, snorkeling, horseback riding on the beach. It's going to be incredible. I'm happy for you, I said quietly. You should come with us instead. What? Seriously, why don't you and James cancel the wedding and come to Costa Rica with us? I bet Uncle Raymond would pay for you guys too if we asked. You could have like a destination wedding on the beach or something. Wouldn't that be way cooler than Willowbrook Gardens? I closed my eyes. Austin, I've been planning this wedding for over a year. I have deposits down, vendors booked, guests traveling from out of state. I can't just cancel everything. Why not? Most of that stuff is probably refundable if you give enough notice. And the guests would probably prefer a trip to Costa Rica too, if they could afford it. Because it's my wedding, Austin, the wedding I planned, the venue I chose, the day I've been dreaming about. Okay, but dreams change, right? Maybe this is the universe telling you to do something bigger and better. The universe isn't telling me anything. My family is choosing a vacation over my wedding, and you're trying to make me feel like I should be grateful for the option to tag along. I'm not trying to make you feel anything, I'm just saying be practical about this. What's really better, a wedding at a garden venue in Oregon or a week in paradise? That word again. Practical. As if my feelings and dreams and the significance of my wedding day were impractical considerations that a mature person would dismiss. Austin, let me ask you something. When you get married someday, do you want me there? Of course I do. You're my sister. And if I told you I couldn't come because I had a free vacation opportunity that same weekend, how would you feel? That's different. How is it different? Because I'd probably want you there more than you want us there. What makes you think I don't want you there? Come on, Delilah, you've always been super independent. You moved to Portland by yourself. You planned this whole wedding by yourself. You never really ask for help with anything. It's not like you need us there. And there it was, the same logic my parents had used. My independence, my self-sufficiency, my lifetime of not wanting to be a burden, had somehow been interpreted as not needing or wanting family support. Austin, just because I'm capable of handling things on my own doesn't mean I don't want my family there for important moments. But you've never really made a big deal about family stuff before. Because I was always accommodating everyone else's schedules and priorities. I was always the one who adjusted, who understood, who didn't make waves. But this is my wedding. This is the one time I thought I could count on my family to prioritize me. Look, I get that you're disappointed, but you're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. We'll all be together for Christmas, and you can show us the wedding photos and tell us all about it. You want me to show you photos of the wedding you chose not to attend? Why are you being so dramatic about this? It's just one day. Just one day. The same phrase my mother had used. as if the most important day of my life was just an arbitrary date on the calendar. Austin, I have to go. Delilah, don't be mad. You know we love you. I know you do, but apparently there are limits to how that love translates into action. After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what was happening. This wasn't about a scheduling conflict or financial constraints or family dynamics. This was about my family showing me, in the clearest possible terms, that I was not a priority. For 30 years, I had been the understanding daughter, the flexible sister, the one who accommodated everyone else's needs and schedules. I had convinced myself that this made me mature, that this made me the easy one, that this was a positive trait. But what it had actually done was teach my family that my needs were optional, that my feelings were secondary, that my important moments were negotiable. I thought about James, my fiancé, who would be coming home from work soon, expecting to hear about final wedding details. How was I going to tell him that my entire family had chosen a vacation over our wedding? How was I going to explain that the people who were supposed to love me most had collectively decided that I wasn't worth showing up for? But as I sat there in the darkness, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder was crystallizing, something that felt like resolve. They had made their choice. They had shown me exactly where I stood in their hierarchy of priorities. And for the first time in my life, I was done accepting that position. I was done being understanding. I was done being accommodating. I was done making excuses for people who couldn't be bothered to show up for me. If they could choose a luxury vacation over my wedding, then I could choose to stop being the family member who always bent over backward to maintain relationships with people who didn't value me enough to show up when it mattered. The girl who would have spent the next 2 months trying to convince them to change their minds, who would have made herself smaller to make them feel better about their choice, who would have ultimately forgiven them and pretended it didn't matter, that girl was done. Something new was taking her place. Someone who was finally ready to stop accepting crumbs and start demanding the respect she deserved. They wanted to prioritize Vista Paraíso over their daughter and sister? Fine. But they had no idea what they had just set in motion. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. While my family was probably browsing Costa Rican resort websites and planning their luxury vacation, I was about to make some plans of my own. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the morning researching. I started with Vista Paraíso, the resort that was apparently more important to my family than my wedding day. The website was impressive, I had to admit. Sprawling oceanfront property, multiple infinity pools cascading down toward the Pacific, suites with private terraces and outdoor showers. The kind of place that charged $3,000 a night during peak season. Uncle Raymond was indeed dropping serious money on this family reunion. I scrolled through the photo gallery, taking in every detail: the main lodge with its soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows, the spa pavilion built over the water, the private beach club with its white sand and crystal-clear water, the restaurants, one casual beachside, one elegant fine dining, one poolside grill, and one rooftop bar that looked like something from a movie. But what caught my attention wasn't the luxury amenities. It was a small note at the bottom of the About Us page. Vista Paraíso is currently seeking new ownership as part of a planned transition. For serious inquiries about acquisition opportunities, please contact our management team. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I opened a new browser tab and started researching something else entirely: my inheritance. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, had passed away 18 months ago, leaving me a substantial inheritance that I'd barely touched. Grandma Eleanor had been a successful businesswoman who'd built a small empire of commercial real estate throughout the Pacific Northwest. When she died, she'd left most of her estate to me, with smaller amounts going to my parents in Austin. At the time, I'd been overwhelmed by grief and the responsibility of managing suddenly having significant wealth. I'd moved the money into conservative investments and tried not to think about it too much. It felt wrong somehow to benefit from losing the one family member who had always truly prioritized me. But sitting there looking at Vista Paraiso's acquisition notice, I realized that maybe Grandma Eleanor's final gift could serve a purpose she would have appreciated. I called the private wealth management firm that handled my investments. Ms. Hawthorne, my advisor Trevor Wellington, greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you today?" "I want to discuss liquidating a portion of my portfolio for a business acquisition." "Oh, that's exciting. What type of business are you considering?" "Hospitality, specifically a resort in Costa Rica." There was a pause. That's quite a shift from graphic design. "Do you have experience in the hospitality industry?" "Not yet, but I'm a fast learner, and I have a very specific vision for this property." We spent the next hour going over my financial position. The numbers were staggering, even to me. Grandma Eleanor's estate had grown significantly since her death, and I had enough liquid assets to make a serious offer on a property like Vista Paraiso, especially if they were motivated to sell. "Ms. Hawthorne," Trevor said carefully, "this would be a significant investment. Are you certain you want to move this quickly on what sounds like an impulse decision?" "It's not an impulse, Trevor. It's strategic." After hanging up with him, I spent the rest of the day researching Costa Rican business law, resort acquisition processes, and hospitality management. I called contacts from my design work who had experience with international business deals. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in Central American property law. By evening, I had a plan. James came home to find me surrounded by legal documents, financial statements, and printouts about resort operations. "Babe," he said, setting down his briefcase and looking around our living room, which now resembled a war room, "what's all this?" "I'm buying Vista Paraiso." He blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The resort in Costa Rica where my family is going instead of our wedding. I'm buying it." James sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. "Delilah, are you having some kind of breakdown?" "Actually, I think I'm having the opposite. I think I'm finally thinking clearly." I explained everything. The inheritance I'd barely touched, the resort's availability for purchase, the research I'd done all day. James listened with an expression that cycled through confusion, concern, and something that might have been admiration. "So let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Your family chooses a luxury vacation over our wedding, and your response is to buy the resort they're vacationing at?" "That's exactly right." "That's either brilliant or completely insane. Why can't it be both?" James was quiet for a long moment, processing. "How much money are we talking about here?" I told him the preliminary numbers. His eyes widened. "Delilah, that's a huge chunk of your inheritance." "It's my money and it's my choice. Besides, it's not just about revenge. Though I won't lie, that's part of it. Vista Paraiso is actually a solid investment. Prime oceanfront property in Costa Rica, established clientele, profitable operations. The current owners want to sell because they're retiring, not because the business is failing. But you don't know anything about running a resort." "I don't know anything about running a resort yet. But I know about customer service, I know about design and aesthetics, and I'm about to learn everything else I need to know." "What about our wedding? What about your job? What about our life here?" "The wedding happens as planned. My family made their choice, but that doesn't mean I'm canceling my special day. If anything, this makes me even more determined to have the perfect wedding, without people who don't value me enough to show up." "And your job?" "I'll figure that out. Maybe I'll work remotely, maybe I'll transition to consulting, or maybe I'll discover I have a talent for hospitality management." James ran his hands through his hair. "This is a lot, Delilah." "I know it is, and if you're not comfortable with this, I understand. But I need you to know that I'm doing this with or without support." "What do you mean?" "I mean this is happening. I'm not asking for permission, and I'm not looking for someone to talk me out of it. This is the first time in my adult life that I'm making a major decision based entirely on what I want, without considering how it might inconvenience other people or make them uncomfortable. James studied my face for a long moment. What about your family? What happens when they show up for their vacation and find out you own the place? I smiled for the first time in days. That's going to be interesting, isn't it? You're really going to do this. I'm really going to do this. And you want their vacation to be what exactly? I want them to experience what it feels like when someone who's supposed to care about you decides you're not worth prioritizing. Delilah, that sounds like justice, I finished. It sounds like justice. The next morning, I called the contact number for Vista Paraiso's acquisition team. A woman with a crisp British accent answered. Vista Paraiso Resort, this is Victoria Ashford speaking. Ms. Ashford, my name is Delilah Hawthorne, and I'm interested in discussing the acquisition opportunity for your property. Wonderful! Are you calling on behalf of a hospitality group or investment firm? I'm calling on behalf of myself. I'm a private investor looking to acquire and personally manage the property. I see. And what's your background in hospitality management, if you don't mind me asking? I don't have a traditional hospitality background, but I have significant experience in customer service, design, and project management. More importantly, I have a very clear vision for what I want Vista Paraiso to become. And what vision is that? A place where guests feel truly valued and prioritized. Where customer service isn't just about luxury amenities, but about making people feel like they matter. Victoria paused. That's an interesting approach. Most potential buyers focus primarily on profit margins and operational efficiency. Those things matter too, of course. But I believe that genuinely caring about your guests' experience is what creates lasting success in hospitality. Would you be interested in visiting the property? We could arrange a tour and preliminary meeting with the current ownership team. Absolutely. When would be convenient? How's next week? We could have you here Monday through Wednesday to really get a comprehensive look at the operations. I thought about the timeline. My family's vacation was still 6 weeks away. If I moved quickly, I could have the acquisition completed well before their arrival. Next week works perfectly. Excellent. I'll send you the travel arrangements and itinerary. And Ms. Hawthorne? Yes. I have to say, there's something refreshing about your approach to this. Most investors treat resort acquisition like they're buying a factory. You sound like you actually understand that hospitality is about people. Thank you. I think that perspective is going to serve me well. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from being the accommodating daughter who was expected to understand her family's betrayal to being a woman about to purchase a luxury resort in Costa Rica. My family thought they were choosing Vista Paraiso over me. They had no idea they were about to be choosing me over Vista Paraiso. And unlike them, I was going to make sure they fully understood what that choice meant. The flight to Costa Rica gave me 8 hours to second-guess my decision, but by the time we began our descent into San Jose, I felt more confident than ever. Looking down at the lush green landscape dotted with volcanic peaks, I realized this wasn't just about buying a resort. It was about buying my freedom from a lifetime of being undervalued. Victoria Ashford met me at the airport, a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that suggested she'd spent decades in luxury hospitality. The drive to Vista Paraiso took 2 hours through winding mountain roads that eventually opened up to reveal the Pacific coast in all its glory. There she is, Victoria said as we rounded the final curve. Vista Paraiso spread out below us like something from a dream. The resort was even more stunning in person than in the photographs. The main building was a masterpiece of modern architecture that seemed to flow seamlessly into the landscape, with curved lines that echoed the nearby coastline and floor-to-ceiling glass that reflected the ocean beyond. The property encompasses 47 acres, Victoria explained as we drove through the main entrance. 26 luxury suites, 4 restaurants, 3 pools, a world-class spa, and 800 meters of private beach frontage. As we pulled up to the main lodge, I noticed the attention to detail everywhere: the hand-carved wooden sculptures, the tropical gardens that looked effortlessly natural but were clearly meticulously maintained, the staff members who smiled genuinely as they went about their work. The current owners, Henrik and Ingrid Nilsson, built this place from nothing over the past 15 years, Victoria continued. They're Swedish entrepreneurs who fell in love with Costa Rica and decided to create their vision of paradise. But they're in their 70s now and ready to pass the torch to someone who shares their passion for hospitality excellence. I met Henrik and Ingrid in the main lodge's living area, a soaring space with a living wall of tropical plants and panoramic ocean views. They were exactly what I'd expected: elegant, gracious, and clearly devoted to their creation. "Ms. Hawthorne," Henrik said, rising to greet me, "Victoria tells us you have an interesting background for someone looking to acquire a resort." "I suppose that's true," I replied, "but I think sometimes an outside perspective can bring fresh energy to an established business." "Tell us about your vision," Ingrid said, settling back into her chair with the kind of attentive posture that suggested she genuinely cared about my answer. I spent the next hour explaining my philosophy about hospitality, how it should be about making guests feel truly valued, how luxury should extend beyond thread counts and marble bathrooms to encompass genuine care and attention. I talked about my background in design and how I saw opportunities to enhance the guest experience through both aesthetic and operational improvements. "And what draws you specifically to Vista Paraíso?" Henrik asked. This was where I had to be careful. I couldn't exactly explain that I was buying the resort to teach my family a lesson about prioritizing luxury vacations over important family moments. "I've been researching properties throughout Central America," I said instead, which was technically true as of 3 days ago. "But Vista Paraíso stands out because it's clear that every decision here has been made with genuine care for the guest experience. That's rare in the industry, and it's exactly the foundation I want to build upon." Over the next 2 days, I toured every inch of the property. I met with the head chef, Marco, who gave me a private cooking class in the main kitchen and explained his philosophy of using local ingredients to create dishes that reflected both Costa Rican tradition and international sophistication. I spent time with Elena, the spa director, learning about the wellness programs and the partnerships with local indigenous communities that provided traditional healing treatments. I sat in on staff meetings, reviewed financial documents, and even spent an evening working alongside the housekeeping team to understand the operational details that guests never saw but that made their experience seamless. "You're very thorough," observed Carlos, the general manager, as I shadowed him during his evening walkthrough. "Most potential buyers want to see the profit margins and the guest satisfaction scores. They don't usually ask to understand how we coordinate laundry schedules." "Those details matter," I replied. "Luxury hospitality is built on a foundation of perfectly executed ordinary tasks." That's exactly what Henrik and Ingrid always say. On my final evening, Henrik and Ingrid invited me to have dinner at their private residence on the property, a beautiful villa tucked into the hillside with sweeping ocean views. Over Ingrid's homemade seafood risotto and a bottle of wine from Henrik's collection, we talked about the future of Vista Paraíso. "We've had several offers over the past 6 months," Ingrid said, "most of them from hotel chains or investment groups who want to expand the property, add more rooms, increase capacity." "And why haven't you accepted any of those offers?" I asked. "Because they don't understand what we've built here," Henrik replied. "They see Vista Paraíso as an asset to be maximized rather than an experience to be preserved and enhanced." "What do you see when you look at this place?" Ingrid asked me. I thought carefully before answering. "I see a place where people come to remember what it feels like to be truly valued, where every interaction makes them feel important and cared for, where the goal isn't just to provide luxury, but to create moments that matter." The older couple exchanged a look. "There's something else we should discuss," Henrik said. "We'd like to stay involved during the transition period. Not as owners, but as consultants. to make sure the handover preserves what makes this place special. I'd be honored to have your guidance, I said sincerely. Then let's talk numbers, Ingrid said with a smile. The negotiation took place the following morning in Victoria's office. The asking price was substantial, but not unreasonable given the property's condition, location, and proven profitability. More importantly, it was well within my budget thanks to Grandma Eleanor's legacy. There is one condition, I said as we reviewed the preliminary terms. I need the sale to be completed within 3 weeks. Victoria raised an eyebrow. That's an extremely aggressive timeline for a property of this magnitude. I understand, but I have personal reasons for needing to take ownership by that specific date. May I ask what those reasons are? Henrik inquired. I paused, considering how much to reveal. Let's just say I have some very important guests arriving in early May, and I want to be able to welcome them personally as the new owner. Important guests? Ingrid asked. Family, I said simply. Something in my tone must have conveyed that this was significant, because no one pressed for more details. 3 weeks is possible if you're prepared to expedite all the legal and financial processes, Victoria said, but it will require some additional fees for rush processing. Whatever it costs, I'll cover it. And you're certain about this timeline? Once we begin this process, there won't be room for delays. I thought about my family, probably browsing travel websites and planning their Costa Rican adventure, completely unaware that they were about to encounter the family member they deemed not worth prioritizing. I'm absolutely certain. The next week passed in a blur of paperwork, wire transfers, inspections, and legal reviews. My lawyer in Portland worked around the clock with a Costa Rican legal team to ensure every document was perfect. Trevor, my financial advisor, questioned my sanity at least 3 times per day but dutifully arranged the necessary fund transfers. James, meanwhile, had moved from skeptical to impressed to slightly worried about what he'd gotten himself into by proposing to me. You realize there's no going back from this, he said during one of our nightly phone calls while I was still in Costa Rica finalizing details. There's been no going back since the moment my family chose a vacation over our wedding, I replied. This is just me finally accepting that reality and acting accordingly. And you're sure you want to actually run a resort? This isn't just an elaborate revenge scheme that you'll regret once you've made your point? James, I've spent the past 2 weeks learning from people who've devoted their lives to creating genuine hospitality. I've discovered that I'm passionate about this industry in a way I never was about graphic design. Even if my family had nothing to do with this, I think I would have eventually found my way to something like this. So this is really happening. This is really happening. On a Thursday morning in early April, exactly 3 weeks after my first conversation with Victoria, I signed the final documents that made me the owner of Vista Paraíso. Henrik and Ingrid walked me through the property one last time, now as their successor rather than a potential buyer. There's one more thing, Ingrid said as we stood on the terrace of the main lodge, looking out over the infinity pool to the ocean beyond. We never asked about those important family guests you mentioned. I smiled, feeling a sense of anticipation that was equal parts excitement and something darker. They don't know they're coming to visit me yet, I said. It's going to be a surprise. A good surprise? Henrik asked. That remains to be seen, I replied, but it's definitely going to be memorable. As I stood there, officially the owner of one of Costa Rica's most exclusive resorts, I realized that my family's betrayal had led me to something I never would have discovered otherwise. I was no longer just Delilah, the accommodating daughter. I was Delilah Hawthorne, resort owner, hospitality entrepreneur, and a woman who had finally learned to prioritize herself. My family would be arriving in 3 weeks for their luxury vacation. They just didn't know yet that their hostess would be the daughter and sister they deemed not worth showing up for. Back in Portland, I threw myself into the final wedding preparations with a renewed sense of purpose. My family's absence, which had initially felt like a devastating blow, now felt like a blessing in disguise. I was planning my perfect day without having to accommodate anyone else's opinions or manage their emotions. I upgraded the flowers, expanded the menu, and hired a photographer whose work had caught my eye but whom I'd previously dismissed as too expensive. If I was going to celebrate without my family, I was going to celebrate spectacularly. James watched this transformation with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "You're different," he said one evening as I finalized details with the wedding planner over video call. "Different how?" "More decisive, more confident. It's like you've stopped asking permission for things you want." He was right. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based purely on what would make me happy, without considering how those decisions might inconvenience or upset other people. The wedding day arrived with perfect spring weather, sunshine, gentle breeze, and the kind of clear blue sky that made everything look like it belonged in a magazine. As I got ready in the bridal suite at Willowbrook Gardens, surrounded by my closest friends instead of family members, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. "Any regrets?" asked my maid of honor, Caroline, as she helped me into my dress. "About what?" "About your family not being here." I considered the question seriously. You know what? No. I spent so many years trying to earn their attention and prioritization. Having them here would have just been a reminder of how little my happiness actually matters to them. This way, I get to focus on celebrating with people who actually chose to show up. The ceremony was everything I dreamed it would be. James's family had warmly embraced me, and his parents made a point of telling everyone that they were proud to welcome me into their family. The guests were fully present, engaged, and genuinely happy to be there. During the reception, I found myself laughing more than I had in months. But the most satisfying moment came when it was time for social media posts. I'd hired a social media photographer specifically to capture Instagram-worthy moments throughout the day. As the reception wound down, I selected the most stunning photos. Me and James during our first dance with the sunset behind us, the elegant table settings, the gorgeous floral arrangements, and one particularly beautiful shot of me alone in my dress, looking radiant and genuinely joyful. I posted them with a simple caption, "Married my best friend today, surrounded by the people who matter most. Couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. Hashtag worth the wait, hashtag true love, hashtag choosing joy." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of likes and comments poured in from friends, colleagues, extended family members, and acquaintances. Everyone was gushing about how beautiful everything looked, how happy we appeared, how perfect the whole celebration seemed. But the responses I was really waiting for came about an hour later. First, a comment from my cousin Jade. "Wait, was this today? Wasn't this the same weekend as?" Then Aunt Cecilia, "Beautiful wedding, honey. Sorry we missed it." And finally, a direct message from my mother. "The photos are lovely, sweetheart. I hope you had a wonderful day. We're having an amazing time in Costa Rica, but thinking of you. Love you." I screenshotted that message and sent it to Caroline with my own commentary. Apparently, they're having an amazing time at the resort they chose over my wedding. How nice for them. Caroline's response was immediate. "Please tell me you have an evil plan brewing." "You'll see," I typed back. The following week, while my family was presumably enjoying their luxury vacation, I began implementing the operational changes I'd been planning for Vista Paraíso. Working remotely with Carlos and the management team, I started introducing what I privately called the accountability experience. The changes were subtle but significant. I restructured the guest services approach to focus on truly personalized attention and ensuring every guest feels like our highest priority. I implemented new protocols that required staff to go above and beyond in making guests feel valued and appreciated. But I also introduced some new policies that would specifically impact guests who had a history of deprioritizing family commitments. I created a special family values questionnaire that was presented to guests as part of our enhanced personalization service. Questions included things like, "What family celebrations have you attended in the past year?" And "How do you typically prioritize family commitments versus leisure activities?" Based on the responses, guests would be categorized into different service levels. Those who demonstrated strong family values would receive our Platinum Priority treatment, early check-in, complimentary upgrades, personal concierge service, and access to exclusive experiences. Those who showed a pattern of prioritizing leisure over family commitments would receive our Standard service, which was still excellent by industry standards, but noticeably less attentive than what other guests were experiencing. I also implemented a new family appreciation program where guests who were celebrating family milestones or who had made sacrifices to attend family events would receive special recognition and upgrades. Carlos was initially confused by these new protocols. "Ms. Hawthorne, these seem very specific. Are you expecting particular types of guests?" "Let's just say I have a theory about the correlation between how people treat their families and how much they truly appreciate luxury experiences," I replied. "I think guests who take their families for granted might also take exceptional service for granted." That's an interesting hypothesis. We'll have a chance to test it very soon. Meanwhile, I started receiving updates from my family about their vacation. My mother sent photos of the beautiful suite they were staying in, complete with the private terrace and infinity pool. Austin posted videos of himself zip-lining and snorkeling. My father shared pictures of the gourmet meals they were enjoying. Each post was accompanied by captions about how this was the trip of a lifetime and better than we ever imagined, and Uncle Raymond really outdid himself. What they didn't know was that I was monitoring every aspect of their stay through the resort's guest management system. I could see their room assignments, their dining reservations, their activity bookings, even their spa appointments. I also had access to their guest profile, which Carlos had thoughtfully flagged for my personal attention. The Hawthorne family group has been categorized as standard service level based on their family values questionnaire responses, he reported during one of our daily check-ins. Apparently, they recently chose to miss a family wedding in favor of this vacation. How unfortunate, I replied. And how are they finding their standard service experience? Well, there have been a few incidents. Their dinner reservation requests have been accommodated, but not with the preferred seating they requested. The spa has been fully booked when they've tried to schedule couples treatments. And yesterday there was a mix-up with their room service order that took about 90 minutes to resolve. 90 minutes seems excessive. Yes, well, our team was prioritizing the Platinum Priority guests' requests first, as per the new protocols. The Hawthorne's order was handled after we'd taken care of the guests who scored higher on family values. I see. And how are they responding to these service delays? There have been some complaints. Apparently they're not accustomed to not being treated as VIP guests. Uncle Raymond has been particularly vocal about the service not meeting his expectations, given what he paid for the trip. I felt a warm satisfaction spreading through my chest. Well, I suppose when you're used to prioritizing luxury experiences over family commitments, it can be jarring to discover that not everyone shares those values. Should we adjust their service level? Absolutely not. I think it's important for guests to experience the natural consequences of their priorities. If they value luxury vacation experiences over family relationships, they should understand what it feels like when their experience is deprioritized in favor of people who make better choices. Understood. There is one more thing, though. What's that? They've requested a meeting with management. Uncle Raymond is quite upset and wants to speak with someone in authority about the service issues they've been experiencing. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. This was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Schedule the meeting, I said. I'll handle it personally. You're coming to Costa Rica? Oh, yes. I think it's time for a family reunion. Over the next few days, I made arrangements to fly back to Costa Rica for what my family believed would be a complaint meeting with resort management. They had no idea they were about to come face to face with the daughter and sister they'd abandoned for this very vacation. As I packed for the trip, I found myself looking forward to the confrontation in a way that surprised me. For 30 years, I'd avoided conflict, swallowed my hurt, and accommodated other people's poor treatment of me. But now, armed with both the moral high ground and actual power over their vacation experience, I was ready to have the conversation we should have had months ago. My family thought they were going to complain about poor service at a luxury resort. Instead, they were about to learn what it felt like to be deprioritized by someone who held all the cards. And unlike them, I was going to make sure they fully understood the lesson I was teaching them. The flight to Costa Rica felt different this time. 2 months ago, I'd been a nervous first-time resort buyer hoping to make a good impression. Now I was returning as the owner, flying first class and carrying the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you hold all the cards in a game the other players don't even realize they're participating in. I arrived at Vista Paraíso on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days into my family's week-long vacation. Carlos met me at the main entrance with a detailed briefing folder and an expression that suggested he was both impressed and slightly concerned about my unconventional management style. The Hawthorne party is currently at the beach club, he informed me as we walked toward my private owner's suite. They've been there since lunch, and I understand there was another incident with their cabana service. What kind of incident? They requested a premium beachside cabana with full service, but our Platinum Priority guests had reserved all the premium locations. The family was assigned a standard cabana further from the water, and Uncle Raymond was quite vocal about his displeasure. How vocal? He demanded to speak with the beach club manager and made several references to the amount of money he'd spent on this trip. He also mentioned that he'd stayed at other 5-star resorts where his group would never have been treated with such quote, disregard. I couldn't help but smile. And how did our staff respond? Professionally, as always. The beach club manager explained that our premium locations are reserved for guests who demonstrate exceptional family values, and that their group had been assigned an appropriate service level based on their initial assessment. I'm sure that went over well. Uncle Raymond asked what family values assessment meant, and when it was explained that guests who prioritize family commitments receive enhanced service, he became quite agitated. We reached my suite, a stunning 2-bedroom villa with panoramic ocean views and a private infinity pool. As I unpacked, Carlos continued his briefing. There have been several other incidents throughout their stay. Yesterday, your mother attempted to book a couples massage for her and your father at the spa, but all the premium treatment rooms were reserved for Platinum Priority guests. She was offered appointments in our standard treatment rooms, but the timing conflicted with their dinner reservation. Which they couldn't change, I assume? Correct. The restaurants have been fully booked during prime dining hours, with preference given to guests who score higher on our family values assessment. The Hawthorne party has been accommodated, but not always at their preferred times or with their preferred seating. And how has Austin been handling these disappointments? He's been particularly frustrated with the activities program. He signed up for a sunset horseback riding excursion, but it was canceled due to quote, capacity limitations. In reality, we prioritized guests who were celebrating family milestones or had made sacrifices to spend time with loved ones. Which Austin definitely has not. Precisely. He spent considerable time at the activities desk, expressing his opinion that this level of service was unacceptable for a resort of Vista Paraíso's caliber. I walked out onto my private terrace and looked down toward the beach club. Even from this distance, I could make out my family's group clustered around what was clearly one of the less desirable cabana locations. Uncle Raymond appeared to be gesticulating animatedly at a staff member, while my mother sat rigidly in her chair with the particular posture she adopted when she was deeply displeased but trying to maintain composure. Carlos, how would you characterize their overall satisfaction level at this point? Well, they're not having the 5-star experience they expected. They keep comparing Vista Paraíso unfavorably to other luxury resorts they visited, and there's been considerable discussion about whether Uncle Raymond should request a partial refund. A partial refund? This was better than I'd hoped. Yes, apparently he's feeling that the service level doesn't justify the premium pricing. He's mentioned several times that he could have taken the family to a Four Seasons for less money and received better treatment. I felt a warm satisfaction spreading through my chest. My family was finally experiencing what it felt like to be deprioritized, to have their expectations dismissed, to be made to feel like they weren't quite important enough for the treatment they believed they deserved. There's something else, Carlos continued. They've been asking questions about the ownership. What kind of questions? Uncle Raymond has been trying to understand the family values assessment system. He asked the concierge who developed these policies and when they were implemented. Apparently, he's never encountered anything like it at other resorts. And what has the staff told him? That the policies were implemented by our new ownership as part of an enhanced guest experience program focused on recognizing and rewarding guests who demonstrate strong personal values. Has anyone mentioned my name? Not yet, but Uncle Raymond has requested a meeting with senior management to discuss what he considers to be discriminatory treatment. He's scheduled to meet with me tomorrow afternoon, but I was hoping you might want to handle that conversation personally. The irony was delicious. Uncle Raymond, who had essentially bribed my family to abandon my wedding in favor of his luxury vacation, was now demanding to speak with management about being treated as less than a priority. I'll definitely be handling that meeting personally, I said, but first I think I'd like to observe their experience firsthand. Observe how? I want to see how they're interacting with the staff, how they're responding to the service delays, how they're treating the people who are trying to accommodate them despite their lower priority status. That could be arranged. Would you like to dine at Maria tonight? That's where they have dinner reservations. Perfect. Book me a table where I can watch without being seen. That evening, I positioned myself at a corner table in Maria with a clear view of my family's party. They'd been seated at a perfectly acceptable table near the window, but not the premium oceanfront table that Uncle Raymond had apparently requested. I could see the tension in their body language before they'd even opened their menus. The service they received was professional and courteous, but not the deferential, anticipatory attention that Platinum Priority guests enjoyed. Their water glasses weren't refilled quite as quickly. Their server didn't linger to make personalized recommendations. When Uncle Raymond sent back his wine for being too warm, the replacement took 15 minutes to arrive instead of the immediate accommodation that premium guests would have received. I watched my mother's face as she observed other tables receiving what appeared to be more attentive service. She kept glancing around the restaurant with the particular expression she wore when she felt she was being slighted but couldn't quite identify why. Austin was less subtle in his frustration. He flagged down their server multiple times with complaints about the temperature of his soup, the preparation of his fish, and the timing of their courses. Each complaint was handled professionally, but without the elaborate apologies and immediate corrections that he was clearly expecting. But it was Uncle Raymond who provided the most entertainment. He spent the entire meal cataloging every minor imperfection in their experience: the bread that wasn't warm enough, the delay in taking their dessert order, the fact that the table next to them received a complimentary appetizer that his party hadn't been offered. "This is not the Vista Paraíso experience I researched," I heard him saying to my father as they finished their meal. "The reviews for this place were exceptional, but our experience has been consistently disappointing." "Maybe we just had bad luck with timing," my father replied, though he sounded unconvinced. "Bad luck? Robert, this is our 4th night here, and every single interaction has been subpar. I've stayed at dozens of 5-star resorts, and I've never experienced this level of indifference." My mother leaned forward conspirationally. "Do you think it's because we're Americans? Maybe they prefer European guests." "It's not about nationality," Uncle Raymond said firmly. "There's something deliberate about this. The staff keeps mentioning these priority guests and, quote, family values assessments. I've never heard of anything like that in the hospitality industry." "What do you think it means?" Austin asked. "I think," Uncle Raymond said, lowering his voice, "that we're being deliberately downgraded for some reason, and tomorrow I'm going to find out why." As I watched them struggle to understand why they weren't receiving the VIP treatment they felt entitled to, I realized that this was only the beginning. They were frustrated and confused now, but they still had no idea who was orchestrating their disappointing experience or why. Tomorrow's meeting with management was going to provide the answers they were looking for, along with some answers they definitely weren't expecting. I finished my wine and prepared to leave the restaurant, walking past their table on my way out. For a moment, I considered stopping to say hello, to reveal myself, and end the suspense. But I decided that anticipation was half the pleasure. Let them spend one more night wondering why their luxury vacation was falling short of their expectations. Let them puzzle over the mysterious family values assessment and the preferential treatment being given to other guests. Tomorrow, they would understand exactly why their experience had been so disappointing. Tomorrow, they would learn that the daughter and sister they'd abandoned for this vacation was the one controlling every aspect of their stay. And tomorrow, they would finally understand what it felt like to be deprioritized by someone who held all the power in the relationship. The morning of the confrontation, I took extra care with my appearance. I chose a tailored white blazer over a silk blouse, professional but unmistakably elegant. I wanted to look like someone who belonged in a luxury resort's executive office, someone who commanded respect and wielded real authority. Carlos briefed me one final time as we walked toward the conference room where my family was waiting. "Uncle Raymond arrived 15 minutes early and has been pacing ever since," he reported. "Your mother keeps checking her phone, and Austin looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Your father seems nervous." And Uncle Raymond's mood? Indignant. He spent 10 minutes lecturing our front desk staff about customer service standards and mentioned at least 3 times that he's considering writing negative reviews on multiple travel platforms. Perfect. I paused outside the conference room door, taking a moment to center myself. For 30 years, I'd approached every family interaction from a position of accommodation and apology. Today, I held all the power, and they were the ones who needed something from me. "Are you ready for this?" Carlos asked quietly. "I've been ready for this my entire life." I opened the door and stepped into the conference room. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Uncle Raymond, who had been mid-sentence in what appeared to be a heated monologue, stopped talking so abruptly that his mouth hung open. My mother dropped her phone. Austin's eyes went wide with shock. My father actually stood up from his chair, as if he thought he might need to physically steady himself. "Hello, everyone," I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the conference table. "I understand you've been having some concerns about your stay at Vista Paraíso." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Uncle Raymond was the first to find his voice. "Delilah, what are you doing here?" "I'm here because you requested a meeting with management. I am management." "You're management?" my mother stammered. "I'm the owner, actually. I purchased Vista Paraíso 6 weeks ago." I kept my voice professionally pleasant, as if I were explaining the breakfast menu options. "You own this place?" Austin's voice cracked slightly. "I do, and I have to say, your feedback about our family values assessment program has been particularly interesting to observe." Uncle Raymond sank into his chair, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and something that might have been fear. "Family values assessment?" "Oh yes, it's a new program I implemented specifically to ensure that guests who prioritize family relationships receive the exceptional service they deserve. Guests who demonstrate strong family values, who show up for important family events, who support their loved ones during significant milestones, they receive our Platinum Priority treatment." I opened the folder I'd brought with me and spread out several documents on the table. Now, guests who choose luxury vacations over family weddings, well, they receive our standard service level. Still excellent by industry standards, but not quite the VIP experience that our values-aligned guests enjoy. My mother's face had gone completely pale. Delilah, sweetheart. Let me walk you through your assessment results, I continued, consulting the papers. Question 1. What family celebrations have you attended in the past year? Your answers were interesting. Uncle Raymond, you mentioned several business dinners and golf tournaments, but no family celebrations. Mom, you listed Austin's birthday party and the annual Hawthorne family barbecue, but somehow failed to mention my wedding. Honey, we can explain, my father began. Question 2. How do you typically prioritize family commitments versus leisure activities? Austin, your response was particularly enlightening. You wrote, and I quote, "Family stuff is important, but you have to balance it with opportunities for personal enjoyment." Austin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Question 3. Describe a time when you made a personal sacrifice to support a family member. This one was challenging for your group. Uncle Raymond, you left this question blank. Mom, you wrote about driving to Austin's apartment when his girlfriend broke up with him. Dad, you mentioned helping Uncle Raymond move last year. None of you could think of a single sacrifice you'd made for me. This is ridiculous, Uncle Raymond said, his voice regaining some of its authority. You can't run a business based on personal grudges. Personal grudges? I laughed, and even I was surprised by how genuinely amused I sounded. Uncle Raymond, this isn't personal. This is business. You see, I've discovered that guests who prioritize luxury experiences over family relationships tend to be the most demanding, the least appreciative, and the most likely to take exceptional service for granted. That's not, my mother started. Isn't it? Let's review your stay so far. Despite receiving excellent service by any objective standard, you've complained about table locations, cabana assignments, spa availability, activity scheduling, and dining times. You've demanded to speak with management because your experience wasn't quite luxurious enough to meet your expectations. I pulled out another document. Meanwhile, let me tell you about some of our platinum priority guests this week. The Henderson family in the presidential suite? They're here celebrating their daughter's graduation from medical school. The mother took 3 jobs to put her through college. The Martinez couple in the Ocean Villa? He's a firefighter who used his vacation time to help his elderly father recover from surgery before coming here for their 20th anniversary. The Williams family? They postponed their trip twice to attend family weddings before finally taking this vacation. You're making a point, my father said quietly. I am making a point. People who show up for their families, who prioritize their loved ones' important moments, who make sacrifices for people they care about, those people appreciate and deserve exceptional treatment. People who abandon their daughter's wedding for a free vacation? Well, they get exactly the level of consideration they've shown their family members. Uncle Raymond's face was turning red. Now see here, young lady. See here? I stood up, placing my hands on the table and leaning forward. Uncle Raymond, you coordinated this entire trip for the exact same weekend as my wedding. You knew about my wedding. Mom mentioned it at Christmas dinner. You chose to schedule your family reunion for that specific weekend anyway, knowing it would force everyone to choose between your vacation and my special day. That's not. It absolutely is. And when my parents called to tell you they were concerned about missing my wedding, what did you tell them? Austin mentioned it yesterday in his conversation with the activities coordinator. You told them, and I quote, "A wedding is just one day, but family memories last forever." The room was dead silent. So I implemented a policy to ensure that guests who believe family memories are important actually experience what it means to be prioritized by people who value them. Unfortunately, your group hasn't quite met those standards. This is insane, Austin burst out. You bought an entire resort just to mess with our vacation? I bought a resort because it's an excellent investment and because I discovered I'm passionate about hospitality. The fact that it allowed me to demonstrate some valuable lessons about family priorities, that was just a bonus. Delilah, my mother said, her voice shaking, we never meant to hurt you. Didn't you? Because when I called you upset about being excluded from your vacation plans, you told me I was being dramatic. When I tried to explain how much your presence at my wedding meant to me, you told me I was overreacting. When I asked you to reconsider, you told me I needed to be more understanding of your difficult situation. We thought you'd understand. I do understand. I understand that when forced to choose between a free luxury vacation and your daughter's wedding, you chose the vacation. I understand that when Uncle Raymond offered you this opportunity, not one of you thought to say, actually, that's my daughter's wedding weekend, let me check with her first. I understand that my happiness and my special day ranked below your desire for a complimentary trip to Costa Rica. We love you, sweetheart, my father said desperately. I know you do, but love without consideration, love without sacrifice, love without showing up when it matters, that's not really love, Dad, that's just sentimentality. Uncle Raymond slammed his hand on the table. This is unacceptable. I spent a fortune on this trip, and you're deliberately sabotaging our experience because of some family drama. Family drama? I turned to face him directly. Uncle Raymond, you manipulated my entire family into abandoning my wedding for your vacation. You've spent this entire week complaining that you're not receiving sufficiently deferential treatment at a resort you're visiting instead of supporting your niece on the most important day of her life. And now you're angry that the consequences of those choices have caught up with you. I want a refund, he said. No. Excuse me? You're not getting a refund. You're getting exactly what you paid for. A week at a luxury resort in Costa Rica. The fact that your experience hasn't met your expectations is a reflection of your priorities, not our service standards. This is discrimination. Actually, this is accountability. For the first time in your relationship with this family, your choices have consequences that affect your personal comfort. I gathered my papers and stood up. You have 3 more days of your vacation remaining. You can either enjoy the beautiful property, excellent food, and professional service you're receiving, or you can continue to complain that you're not being treated like royalty by the daughter you abandoned for this trip. But either way, your experience here is going to reflect exactly how much you value family relationships. Where are you going? My mother asked. I'm going to check on our platinum priority guests, the ones who made sacrifices to be here with their loved ones. Unlike some people, I believe in prioritizing people who demonstrate strong family values. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and enjoy the rest of your stay. I'm sure it will be exactly what you deserve. I spent the rest of that day deliberately avoiding my family while monitoring their every move through the resort's guest management system. From my office in the administrative wing, I could track their location, their service requests, and most importantly, their growing desperation to speak with me again. Within an hour of our confrontation, the requests began flooding in. Carlos knocked on my office door around 3 o'clock. The Hawthorne party has been to the front desk 4 times asking for your contact information. Uncle Raymond demanded your phone number, saying he needs to, quote, resolve this situation immediately. And what did you tell them? That resort policy requires all guest concerns to go through proper channels, and that management would reach out to them if necessary. Perfect. What else? Your mother has been calling the main resort line repeatedly, asking to be transferred to the owner's office. She's left 7 messages so far. I pulled up the message log on my computer. The first few messages were apologetic. Sweetheart, please call me back. We need to talk about this. But by message 5, I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. Delilah, this is getting out of hand. Please just pick up the phone. Has anyone tried to approach my private villa? Austin and your father went to the concierge desk asking for directions to your residence. They were informed that guest access to private owner areas is strictly prohibited for security reasons. Good. And their current location? They're at the beach club but not enjoying themselves. Uncle Raymond has been pacing the shoreline for the past hour making phone calls. I believe he's trying to contact travel insurance companies about trip cancellation claims. I laughed. Travel insurance won't cover discovered my niece owns the resort and doesn't like me. There's more. Your mother approached Elena at the spa, asking if she could arrange a private meeting with you. When Elena explained that wasn't possible, your mother became quite emotional. Emotional how? Crying. She told Elena that there's been a family misunderstanding and that her daughter is being unreasonable about wedding attendance. Elena, who wasn't aware of the family connection, reportedly responded that missing family weddings was exactly the type of behavior that would result in standard service levels under our family values program. I had to admit, Elena's unintentional reinforcement of my point was deeply satisfying. What about dinner reservations tonight? They requested to dine at Cielo, our rooftop restaurant. However, all prime seating times are reserved for platinum priority guests. They've been offered a 5:30 p.m. seating or a 9:30 p.m. seating. And their response? Uncle Raymond said both times were unacceptable and demanded to know why they couldn't be accommodated at their preferred 7:30 time slot. When the hostess explained our priority system, he became quite agitated. I imagine he did. As the afternoon progressed, the attempts to reach me became more creative and more desperate. Austin tried to tip a housekeeping staff member to deliver a message to my room. My father approached the activities coordinator, claiming he needed to discuss a family emergency with me. Uncle Raymond even attempted to book a spa treatment, hoping Elena might provide access to my private areas. All requests were politely but firmly denied. By evening, I decided to observe their dinner experience firsthand again. I positioned myself at the bar in Cielo, where I had a perfect view of their early seating table. They'd been placed at a perfectly acceptable table with a partial ocean view. But I could see Uncle Raymond gesturing emphatically toward the prime sunset-facing tables, where other guests were enjoying golden hour cocktails. Their server, Maria, provided professional service but without the warm personal touches that platinum priority guests received. No complimentary appetizers appeared at their table. No sommelier stopped by to offer wine pairings. No manager checked on their satisfaction. I watched my mother scan the restaurant repeatedly, clearly hoping to spot me. Her eyes passed over my position at the bar twice without recognition. Apparently, she wasn't expecting to find me casually enjoying a martini while observing their meal. The conversation at their table was animated and clearly tense. Through body language alone, I could tell that Uncle Raymond was laying out some kind of plan while my parents listened with expressions of worry and uncertainty. Austin kept checking his phone, probably hoping for a text from me that wasn't coming. Halfway through their meal, Uncle Raymond stood up and walked directly to the bar where I was sitting. "We need to talk," he said, sliding onto the stool next to me without invitation. "Hello, Uncle Raymond. Enjoying your dinner?" "Cut the pleasantries, Delilah. This has gone far enough." "Has it? Because from my perspective, we're just getting started. You're punishing your entire family because of hurt feelings about a wedding. I'm providing a learning experience about priorities and consequences. There's a difference. This is childish revenge, and you know it." I turned to face him fully. "Uncle Raymond, let me ask you something. When you planned this trip, did you know it was my wedding weekend?" He hesitated just long enough to confirm what I'd suspected. The date conflict was unfortunate. "That's not what I asked. Did you know? Your mother may have mentioned something about wedding plans, but..." "So you knew. You knew this was my wedding weekend, and you chose to schedule your family reunion anyway, knowing it would force everyone to choose. It wasn't intentional, wasn't it? Because when you could have chosen any week in May, any week in June, any weekend in the entire spring season, you specifically chose the one weekend that would conflict with my wedding. That seems pretty intentional to me. You're reading too much into." And then, when my parents called you concerned about missing my wedding, you convinced them that your vacation was more important than their daughter's special day. You specifically told them that wedding memories fade, but family vacation memories last forever. I was trying to help them see the bigger picture. The bigger picture where my happiness was less important than your vacation plans. Uncle Raymond's voice grew harder. This needs to end, Delilah. Your parents are devastated. Your mother has been crying for hours. This is destroying your family. My family was destroyed the moment all of you collectively decided that a free vacation was more valuable than being present for the most important day of my life. We made a practical decision. You made a selfish decision. And now you're experiencing what it feels like when someone prioritizes their own interests over your comfort and happiness. This is different. We're paying customers here. And I was family there. Which relationship should have carried more weight? Uncle Raymond leaned closer, lowering his voice. What do you want? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry we missed your wedding. Now can we move past this? An apology? Uncle Raymond, I don't want an apology from you. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to experience what it feels like to be deprioritized by someone who holds power over your comfort. And then what? We all learn our lesson and pretend this didn't happen? And then you go home with a clear understanding of how your choices affect other people. Maybe next time you plan a family event, you'll consider checking with family members before scheduling it on their important dates. You can't keep punishing us for the rest of the trip. I'm not punishing you. I'm providing you with the exact level of consideration you showed me. Standard service for people with standard family values. This is insane. This is accountability. Uncle Raymond stood up abruptly. Fine. Keep playing your games. But don't expect your family to forgive you for this humiliation. Uncle Raymond, I called as he turned to leave. I spent 30 years forgiving my family for putting me last. I think I can handle them not forgiving me for finally putting myself first. He stalked back to their table, and I could see him reporting the conversation to my parents. My mother's shoulders sagged with what looked like defeat. My father put his head in his hands. Austin stared at his plate like he was trying to disappear. After they finished their meal and left the restaurant, I received a text from my mother. Please, sweetheart, can't we just talk? This isn't who you are. I typed back, you're right. The person who would have accepted your abandonment quietly and made excuses for your behavior isn't who I am anymore. The person sitting in this resort that I own because I finally learned to value myself, this is exactly who I am. She responded immediately, we love you. I know you do. But love without respect, love without consideration, love without showing up when it matters, that's not enough anymore. The next morning, Carlos reported that Uncle Raymond had spent over an hour on the phone with various travel agencies, trying to arrange early departure. However, changing their flights would cost more than staying for the remaining 2 days, and apparently the financial implications of leaving early were unacceptable to him. So they're staying, I said. They're staying, but the mood in their group is tense. Perfect. Let them spend the next 2 days thinking about how their choices led them here. And if they make more attempts to contact you, maintain the boundaries. I'm not available for guilt trips, manipulation, or attempts to make me feel responsible for their discomfort. They made their choice. Now they get to live with it. For the first time in my adult life, I was maintaining boundaries with my family, without apologizing, without explaining, and without accommodating their discomfort with the consequences of their actions. It felt like freedom. On their final full day at Vista Poriazzo, I received an unexpected visitor. Elena from the spa knocked on my office door with an expression that suggested she had information I needed to hear. Ms. Hawthorne, I apologize for disturbing you, but I thought you should know about a conversation I overheard this morning. What kind of conversation? Your family was at the spa cafe having breakfast, and they didn't realize I was in the adjacent treatment room preparing for my first client. The walls are thin, and I couldn't help but overhear their discussion. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me everything. Your mother was crying again. She kept saying that she doesn't understand how things got so bad, and that she never realized how much she was hurting you. Your father was trying to comfort her, but he sounded pretty broken up himself. And Austin? He was angry, very angry. He kept saying that you were being vindictive, and that this whole situation was proof that you've always been jealous of the family's attention to him. That didn't surprise me. Austin had never been capable of genuine self-reflection. But then Uncle Raymond said something that changed the whole tone of the conversation. What did he say? He told them that he's been thinking about what you said in the bar, and that maybe you had a point. I raised an eyebrow. Uncle Raymond admitted I had a point? He said that when he planned this trip, he did know about your wedding date. He remembered your mother mentioning it at Christmas, and he thought it would be easier to schedule the reunion for that weekend because then no one could back out for family obligations. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. He deliberately scheduled it to conflict with my wedding. That's what he said. He told your parents that he figured if they had to choose between the free vacation and paying to attend a wedding, the choice would be obvious. He said he didn't think you'd mind because you'd always been the understanding one. Did he say anything else? He apologized to your parents. He said he manipulated the situation and that he never considered how much it would hurt you. He said he spent his whole life seeing you as the easygoing one who never asked for anything, so he didn't think about what you actually wanted. Elena paused, seeming to consider whether to continue. There's more? Your mother asked him why he was telling them this now, and he said that sitting in this resort, being treated as a lower priority, made him realize what it feels like to have someone dismiss your importance. He said for the first time he understood what you must have felt when they chose his vacation over your wedding. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. How did my parents respond? Your father got very quiet. But your mother? She had what I can only describe as a breakdown. She started sobbing and saying that she's been a terrible mother, that she spent 30 years taking you for granted because you never complained or demanded attention like Austin did. And Austin? He left, just stood up and walked out when your mother started crying. But before he left, he said something about how you've, quote, always been jealous of his relationship with your parents, and that you're finally showing your true colors. I shook my head. Even when faced with the truth about how they'd treated me, Austin was still making himself the victim. Is there anything else I should know? Yes. After Austin left, your parents and Uncle Raymond spent another hour talking. Your father said that looking back at your life, he can see a pattern of the family putting you second because you never fought for first place. He said you were always so mature and understanding that they forgot you were their daughter who needed support too. That's actually quite insightful for my father. Your mother said that she's been thinking about all the times she chose Austin's needs over yours because his were more immediate and dramatic. She said she realizes now that just because you didn't throw tantrums doesn't mean you didn't have needs. Did they discuss what they plan to do with this newfound awareness? Uncle Raymond said he wants to make things right, but he doesn't know how. Your mother said she wants to try to rebuild your relationship, but she's afraid you'll never forgive them. And your father said that maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe the point is learning to do better. After Elena left, I sat in my office contemplating this development. For 30 years, I'd wanted my family to understand how their treatment affected me. Now they finally seemed to grasp the full scope of how they'd prioritized everyone else's needs over mine. But understanding and change were two different things. I decided to conduct one final test. I called Carlos and asked him to deliver a message to my family's suite. Ms. Hawthorne would like to invite the Hawthorne party to join her for dinner tonight at her private villa. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8. Are you sure about this? Carlos asked. I want to see if their newfound understanding translates into different behavior. And if it doesn't, then I'll know that this week was just an expensive lesson in accepting that some people never change. The afternoon dragged as I prepared for what felt like the most important family dinner of my life. I chose the menu carefully, nothing too elaborate, but elegant enough to demonstrate that I was taking the occasion seriously. I selected wines that paired well with both the food and the conversation I was planning to have. At 7 o'clock exactly, Carlos escorted my family to my private villa. I watched from the terrace as they approached, noting their body language and expressions. Uncle Raymond looked subdued, almost humble. My parents walked closely together, holding hands in a way that suggested they were drawing strength from each other. Austin trailed behind, his posture defensive and his expression resentful. "Good evening," I said as they reached the terrace. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting us," my mother replied quietly. "We weren't sure you'd want to see us again." I wasn't sure either, but I decided that 30 years of family history deserves at least one honest conversation. I served cocktails, a local rum punch that was both delicious and strong enough to encourage honesty. We stood on the terrace for a while, making awkward small talk about the resort's beauty and the perfect weather. Finally, Uncle Raymond broke the pretense. "Delilah, I owe you an explanation and an apology." "You don't owe me anything, Uncle Raymond, but I'm interested in hearing what you have to say." "I deliberately scheduled this trip for your wedding weekend because I knew it would force your parents to choose, and I assumed they'd choose the free vacation. I told myself it was practical, but the truth is I didn't consider your feelings at all." "Why not?" "Because I've always seen you as the family member who doesn't need anything. You've never asked for help, never demanded attention, never created drama. I thought that meant you didn't really care about things like weddings and family gatherings." "But that's not what it meant, was it?" "No. It meant you were accommodating everyone else's needs and not advocating for your own. And we all took advantage of that." My father stepped forward. "Delilah, I've been thinking about your childhood, about all the times we prioritized Austin's immediate needs over your long-term ones. We told ourselves it was because you were more mature, more capable, more understanding. But really, we were just taking the easy path." "What do you mean?" "Austin's needs were always urgent and dramatic. Baseball tournaments, girlfriend problems, academic struggles. Your needs were quieter, more thoughtful. It was easier to address his crises than to really think about what you might need from us." My mother was crying again, but silently this time. "Sweetheart, I've spent this whole week thinking about your wedding day. You must have felt so abandoned. You must have wondered why your own family didn't think your happiness was worth showing up for." "I did wonder that. I wondered what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently to make myself worth prioritizing." "You did nothing wrong," she said firmly. "We did everything wrong. We taught you that being low maintenance was a virtue. But what we really taught you was that your needs didn't matter as much as everyone else's." Austin had been silent through this exchange, but finally he spoke up. "This is all very touching, but can we acknowledge that Delilah's response has been completely over the top? Buying a resort to punish us for missing one day?" The terrace fell silent. My parents and Uncle Raymond turned to look at Austin with expressions of disbelief. "Austin," my father said quietly, "do you understand what we've been talking about?" "I understand that everyone's acting like Delilah is some kind of victim, when she's clearly the one with the power here. She owns this place. She's been manipulating our entire vacation to make some kind of point." I realized that while the adults in my family had experienced genuine growth over the past week, Austin remained exactly who he'd always been, someone incapable of seeing beyond his own immediate comfort. "You're right, Austin," I said calmly. "I do have the power here. And I've learned that having power means I get to decide how much energy to invest in relationships with people who can't reciprocate basic consideration." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that some people in this family have demonstrated capacity for growth and change, and some people haven't." Uncle Raymond, my mother, and my father were looking at Austin with something approaching horror, finally seeing him the way I'd seen him for years. The evening was about to take a very interesting turn. The silence on the terrace stretched until my mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Austin, how can you still not understand what this is about?" "I understand perfectly," Austin replied, his voice defensive and sharp. "Delilah's mad that we chose a vacation over her wedding, so she bought a resort to get revenge. It's petty and vindictive." Uncle Raymond shook his head slowly. "Austin, that's not what happened here. isn't it? She's been playing games with our vacation all week, making us feel unwelcome, treating us like second-class guests, all because we hurt her feelings. I took a sip of my cocktail and studied my brother's face. Even now, surrounded by family members who had experienced genuine growth and understanding, Austin remained locked in his own limited perspective. "Austin," I said calmly, "let me ask you something. During this conversation, have you heard anyone else describe this situation the way you just did?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Mom, Dad, and Uncle Raymond have all acknowledged that they treated me poorly and that their choices hurt me. They've apologized and expressed genuine remorse. But you're still talking about hurt feelings and revenge. Do you hear the difference? You're all being dramatic about a wedding." "Stop." The word came out sharper than I'd intended, and Austin actually took a step back. "Austin, I'm 30 years old. I've spent 3 decades accommodating your crises, supporting your dreams, and accepting that your needs would always come first in this family. And when I finally asked for one thing, for my family to show up on the most important day of my life, you chose a vacation instead." "We all chose the vacation." "No, Austin. Mom, Dad, and Uncle Raymond chose the vacation after struggling with the decision and feeling genuinely conflicted. You chose the vacation because it was more fun than a wedding. There's a difference." My father cleared his throat. "Delilah's right, son. When your mother and I were discussing whether to come to the wedding or go to Costa Rica, you never once suggested we should prioritize your sister's special day. In fact, you actively encouraged us to choose the vacation. Because it was the practical choice." "No," Uncle Raymond said firmly. "It was the selfish choice. And I take full responsibility for creating a situation where that choice had to be made. But your response to that situation says everything about your character." Austin looked around the terrace, realizing for the first time that he was completely alone in his position. "You're all acting like I'm the villain here when Delilah is the one who—" "Austin!" I held up my hand to stop him. "I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say because this is the last time I'm going to explain this to you." He crossed his arms but remained silent. "This isn't about revenge. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about learning that actions have consequences. For 30 years, you've treated me like a supporting character in your life story. You've expected me to be available for your crises, supportive of your dreams, and understanding when your needs took priority over mine. That's not. It absolutely is. When you needed help moving, who drove 6 hours to help you? When your girlfriend broke up with you, who spent 3 days talking you through it? When you needed money for your car repair, who lent you $1,500 that you've never paid back?" Austin shifted uncomfortably but didn't answer. "And when I asked for one thing, for my family to be present at my wedding, you couldn't be bothered to consider my feelings for even a moment. You immediately chose the option that was more fun for you. Delilah, that's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and even I was surprised by how genuinely amused I sounded. "Austin, do you want to know what's not fair? What's not fair is that I spent my entire adult life being the reliable daughter, the understanding sister, the one who never asked for anything, only to discover that when I finally did ask for something, my own family couldn't be bothered to show up." My mother was crying again, but she was nodding in agreement. "So yes," I continued, "I bought this resort. And yes, I implemented policies that ensured you experienced exactly the level of consideration you've shown me over the years. And if you want to call that revenge, fine. But I call it education." "Education?" "You're learning what it feels like to be deprioritized by someone who has power over your comfort. You're learning what it's like to have your expectations dismissed and your needs treated as optional. You're learning what it means to be considered, but only after more important priorities have been addressed." Uncle Raymond nodded slowly. "And it's not a pleasant lesson?" "No, it's not," I agreed, "but it's a necessary one." Austin looked around the group desperately. "So what happens now? We all pretend this week never happened and go back to normal family relationships?" Austin, my father said gently, I don't think there's going to be a normal family relationship anymore. I think we're going to have to build something better. What does that mean? It means, my mother said, wiping her eyes, that we're going to have to learn how to treat your sister with the respect and consideration she deserves. It means we're going to have to prove that we've learned from this experience. And what if I don't want to participate in whatever new family dynamic you're all planning? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I finished my cocktail and set the glass down carefully on the terrace table. Then you don't participate, Austin. You go back to Portland, continue treating people as though their value is determined by how much they can do for you, and wonder why your relationships never seem to work out. You're cutting me out of the family? I'm not cutting you out of anything. I'm simply choosing not to invest my time and emotional energy in someone who has repeatedly demonstrated that he doesn't value what I bring to his life. That's the same thing. No, Austin, it's not. Cutting you out would be actively excluding you from family events and holidays. What I'm doing is stepping back from being your unpaid therapist, your financial backup plan, and your emotional support system. If you want a relationship with me, you'll need to bring something to the table besides your problems and your needs. You're being unreasonable. I'm being selective. For the first time in my adult life, I'm choosing to prioritize relationships with people who demonstrate that they value me as more than just a resource to be utilized. Uncle Raymond stepped forward. Delilah, what about the rest of us? How do we prove that we've learned from this? I considered the question carefully. Uncle Raymond, you've already started by taking responsibility for your role in creating this situation. Mom and Dad, you've acknowledged the pattern of behavior that led us here. That's a beginning. And then you show me through your actions going forward. You consider my feelings when making plans that affect me. You show up for my important moments. You treat me like someone whose happiness matters to you, not just someone who will understand if my happiness has to be sacrificed for practical reasons. And if we do that, my mother asked hopefully, can we rebuild our relationship? We can build a better relationship than we've ever had, I said. But it's going to be different. I'm not going back to being the accommodating daughter who accepts crumbs of attention and consideration. I know my worth now, and I expect to be treated accordingly. That's fair, my father said. More than fair. Austin shook his head in frustration. This is all insane. You've turned the whole family against me because I didn't want to go to a wedding. Austin, I said quietly, I haven't turned anyone against you. I've simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own behavior. And it turns out that when people see your actions clearly, without me making excuses for you or smoothing over your selfishness, they don't like what they see. So that's it. That's how this ends? That's how it begins, I corrected. You get to decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. You can learn from this experience and grow, or you can continue being someone who takes without giving and wonders why people eventually stop wanting to be around you. I stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the ocean, where the sun was beginning to set. Your flights leave tomorrow afternoon, I said, without turning around. Carlos will ensure you have transportation to the airport and that your checkout process is smooth. And after that, my mother asked. After that, we see who you all choose to become. The next morning, I watched from my office window as my family loaded their luggage into the resort's shuttle van. Uncle Raymond and my parents moved with the subdued bearing of people who had been fundamentally changed by their experience. Austin loaded his bags with angry, jerky movements that suggested he remained unchanged and resentful. As the van pulled away, Carlos knocked on my door. How do you feel? He asked. I considered the question seriously. Free, I said, finally. For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free. Any regrets? About buying the resort? Not one. About the way I handled my family? Not one. About finally learning to value myself enough to demand respect from others? Definitely not one. And your family? Some of them will do the work to rebuild our relationship on better terms. Some of them won't. Either way, I'm no longer responsible for managing their emotions or making excuses for their behavior. I turned back to look out at the ocean, where the waves continued their eternal rhythm regardless of human drama. Besides, I added with a smile, I have a resort to run, and I'm discovering that I'm very good at creating environments where people feel truly valued and appreciated. The guests have certainly noticed. Our satisfaction scores have never been higher. That's because we're proving every day that when you prioritize people who demonstrate strong values, everyone's experience improves. Carlos nodded and headed for the door, then paused. Ms. Hawthorne? For what it's worth, I think your family is very lucky that you gave them a chance to learn this lesson while they still have time to change. And I'm very lucky that I finally learned I deserve better than settling for people who can't appreciate what I bring to their lives. As the door closed behind him, I opened my laptop and began reviewing the day's operations. I had a resort to run, guests to delight, and a life to live that was finally, completely my own. My family had chosen a vacation over my wedding. I had chosen myself over their comfort. And for the first time in 30 years, I had absolutely no regrets about putting my own happiness first. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.